We believe in the order of things, in the fairness of the world. We assume that justice, like the air we breathe, is simply there, a fundamental right. But what happens when that harmony is abruptly shattered? When the familiar melody of your daily life is ripped apart by a discordant, jarring note? What happens when the very people sworn to protect you become the source of your deepest fear? Today, we're going to tell you a story that began on one of those perfect afternoons in Willow Creek Community Park. A story about Eleanor Vance, a woman whose life was built on quiet, dignity, and unwavering belief in good. A story about two officers, a seemingly minor incident, and a terrifying moment when the scales of justice seemed to tip violently, irrevocably, into darkness. But this isn't just a story about injustice. It's a powerful narrative about an unlikely hero who stepped out of the shadows, about the surprising strength of a community, and about the profound lesson that even when the music dies, courage can inspire a whole new symphony. Get ready, 'cause this isn't just a tale to listen to while you're driving, working, or winding down for the night. This is a journey into the heart of what it means to be vulnerable, what it means to stand up, and what it truly takes to make the world a more just place. What you're about to hear might surprise you, might move you, and might just ignite something within you. Let's begin. Every afternoon, just as the sun began its gentle descent, painting the sky in hues of soft orange and rose, Eleanor Vance would make her pilgrimage to Willow Creek Community Park. For 72 years, Eleanor had been a quiet force of nature, a history teacher whose passion for the past breathed life into dusty textbooks, a woman whose soft-spoken wisdom had guided countless young minds. In the classroom, she was a vibrant storyteller, weaving tales of ancient empires and modern revolutions. But in the park, amidst the ancient oak trees and the whispering breeze, she found her own peace. This wasn't just a park. It was her sanctuary, a place where the hum of the city faded and the rhythm of her own heart took over. On this particular afternoon, Eleanor was doing what she always did. She walked slowly, a worn copy of her favorite historical fiction tucked under her arm, perhaps humming a forgotten folk tune, or silently rehearsing a captivating anecdote for tomorrow's lesson on civil rights. The air was crisp, carrying the sweet scent of blooming azaleas. It was the kind of day that felt suspended in time, a perfect, unremarkable moment. "Ma'am, hold it right there." The sudden, harsh command sliced through the serenity like a knife. Eleanor paused, her brow furrowing slightly, assuming the officers were speaking to someone behind her. She turned, a polite, inquisitive smile already forming on her lips. But they weren't looking past her. Two police officers, young and brimming with an almost aggressive energy, were striding directly towards her. Their names, though Eleanor wouldn't know them until later, were Officer Thorne and Officer Jenkins. Officer Thorne, with a severe expression and a hand resting on his utility belt, spoke again, his voice devoid of warmth. "Are you Eleanor Vance?" "Yes, I am," she replied, her voice gentle, if a little bewildered. "Can I help you, officers?" Officer Jenkins, equally stern, stepped forward. "Ma'am, you fit the description of a suspect we're looking for. Jaywalking incident this morning. Petty theft of a—" "Jaywalking?" Eleanor interrupted, a small, disbelieving chuckle escaping her. "Officers, I haven't jaywalked in decades, and I've been in my classroom all morning. My car broke down, so I took the bus here directly after school." She gestured vaguely towards her well-worn cardigan and sensible shoes. She was a woman who always followed the rules, who believed in order and justice. This was simply a misunderstanding. But the officers didn't seem to hear her. Their faces remained impassive, their eyes fixed, not on a person, but on a suspect. "We need you to come with us, ma'am." Thorne reached out, his hand grasping her arm. His grip was surprisingly strong, almost bruising. Eleanor instinctively pulled back. "Please, there must be some mistake. I can explain." Her words were cut short. Before she could even finish her sentence, Officer Jenkins moved. With a shocking, sudden force that stole her breath, he grabbed her other arm, twisting it behind her back. She lost her balance, her feet tangling, and in a sickening instant she was thrown to the ground. The concrete scraped her cheek, a sharp pain blooming. Her glasses flew off, landing precariously near a tree root. Humiliation, hot and searing, flooded her. As she lay there, stunned, gasping for air, the cold, unforgiving steel of handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists. Her hands, usually holding chalk or guiding students, were now locked, helpless behind her back. "Stop resisting, ma'am," Thorne snapped, his voice sharp even though she lay motionless. Eleanor could only lie there, trembling, the soft birdsong of moments ago now a cruel, mocking soundtrack to her nightmare. Her mind reeled. This peaceful afternoon, this beautiful park, had morphed into a terrifying, incomprehensible abyss. The world, which had always made sense to her, had suddenly tilted on its axis. She was helpless, a forgotten historical footnote in her own story, at the mercy of two men who saw not a person, but a problem. "Get up, ma'am. Let's go." As Officer Jenkins reached down to pull her up, Eleanor closed her eyes, bracing herself for what felt like the terrifying descent into the unknown. The music of her quiet life had died, replaced by the chilling silence of injustice. She felt a profound loneliness, a crushing sense of powerlessness, as if the entire world had turned its back on her. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly imagine, was that a pair of very different eyes had just witnessed her fall, and a very different kind of music was about to begin. The kind that makes a stand. The world had shrunk to the cold concrete beneath Eleanor's cheek, the tight grip of the handcuffs, and the chilling indifference in the officers' voices. Every fiber of her being screamed against the injustice, but her protests were swallowed by the vast, uncaring silence of the park. It was a silence that spoke of helplessness, of ordinary people being crushed by the unyielding weight of authority. She was just another statistic, another misunderstanding, another face in the endless stream of those who had been wronged. But then, a different kind of sound cut through the oppressive quiet. Not the hurried steps of an indifferent passerby, nor the sharp commands of authority. This was a steady, rhythmic thud, growing closer, deliberate, almost meditative. And then, a voice. Deep, resonant. A voice that didn't demand, but simply stated, holding a quiet power that commanded attention. "Hold it right there. What exactly is going on?" Officer Jenkins, still bent over Eleanor, froze. Officer Thorne, reaching for the patrol car door, slowly straightened. They turned, annoyance etched on their faces, ready to dismiss whoever dared to interrupt their duty. They saw a man, sweat glistening on his brow, his powerful frame suggesting years of disciplined training. He wasn't wearing a uniform, just simple athletic gear. He didn't look like trouble, just solid. "Sir, this is police business. Please step aside," Officer Thorne barked, already reaching for his radio, the hint of a threat in his tone. The man took another step closer. His eyes, though sharp and intelligent, held no anger, only a steely resolve. This was Marcus, the Mauler, Hayes, the retired boxing legend, the man whose fists once commanded stadiums, now dedicated his days to a quiet youth boxing club just a few blocks from here. He was known for his thoughtful generosity, his aversion to the spotlight, and the almost monastic peace he'd found after years of public turmoil. His daily park jog was his sanctuary, a mirror to Eleanor's. "Police business?" Marcus's voice was calm, almost conversational, but it carried an undeniable weight. He gestured towards Eleanor, still cuffed on the ground. "She's an elderly woman, officer. on the ground, handcuffed, for a jaywalking incident? Are we really calling this justice? Officer Jenkins, bristling, finally recognized the face. A flicker of surprise, then irritation crossed his features. Look, Mr. Hayes, with all due respect, we're handling this. She fit a description. We don't need outsiders interfering. Marcus's gaze softened slightly, his empathy evident. He remembered the sting of being judged. By appearance, by assumptions, by a system that rarely looked beyond the surface. Growing up in a tough neighborhood, he knew what it felt like to be underestimated, dismissed or even feared simply because of his circumstances. That feeling, that primal need to prove his worth, was what had driven him in the ring. Now it drove him to stand for someone else. Interfering, Marcus repeated, his voice still low but with a new edge. I'm simply asking for an explanation. Clearly this woman isn't a threat. What exactly is the immediate danger that required this level of force? Is this what we teach our kids about respect for their elders? For basic human dignity? The officers exchanged glances. The confidence that had marked their initial approach began to waver, just slightly. It was one thing to intimidate a lone elderly woman. It was quite another to face the unwavering gaze of a legendary figure who clearly wasn't going to back down. They tried to reassert control, their voices becoming a little louder, a little more desperate. Sir, we can arrest you for obstructing, Thorne threatened, taking a step forward. Marcus didn't flinch. His eyes, which had once made the toughest opponents in the ring tremble, were filled with a quiet resolve. You can try, he said simply, his voice a steady rumble, but I won't be moving. Not until I understand what justified treating this woman like a hardened criminal. Because if I don't stand here now, then who will? He stood there, a silent, imposing guardian. The sun began its slow descent, but the light that now shone in Willow Creek Park wasn't from the sky. It was the spark of an unlikely defiance, a quiet revolution against an act of casual cruelty. The officers knew, deep down, that they had just stepped into a different kind of ring, and the fight wasn't going to be won with intimidation tactics. A crowd was already starting to gather, drawn by the escalating voices and the undeniable presence of Marcus the Mauler Hayes. What they were about to witness wasn't just a confrontation, it was a revelation. The air in Willow Creek Park crackled with a new kind of energy. No longer was it just Eleanor's silent despair or the officer's harsh commands, or even Marcus Hayes' calm defiance. Now, there was a collective hum, a rising tide of curious whispers that soon turned into a chorus of concerned murmurs. People had stopped their morning jogs, their dog walks, their quiet contemplation. They were drawn by the magnetic presence of Marcus and the unsettling sight of an elderly woman cuffed on the ground, clearly distressed. "Is that Marcus Hayes?" a young woman whispered, pulling out her phone. The question rippled through the onlookers, igniting a spark of recognition. Suddenly, this wasn't just another park incident. It was a scene unfolding with a legend at its heart. Marcus, sensing the shift, didn't break eye contact with Officer Thorne, but his gaze subtly flickered towards the burgeoning crowd. He saw the phones, held high, their lenses pointed like silent, unblinking eyes. This was the turning point. This was the unseen witness. In a world saturated with digital records, the truth could no longer be confined to hushed police reports or biased accounts. It would be captured, shared and scrutinized by millions. "Officers," Marcus said, his voice unwavering, but now with a subtle emphasis that only the officers would fully grasp. "Look around. Everyone here is watching. Everyone is recording. This isn't just about a suspect in the park anymore. This is about transparency. This is about accountability." Officer Thorne and Officer Jenkins visibly flinched. The bravado that had carried them through the initial confrontation evaporated, replaced by a growing unease. Their eyes darted from Marcus's unflinching stare to the dozens of glowing phone screens. The stark reality of their actions, laid bare for public consumption, was a different kind of fight than they were used to. They had prepared for physical resistance, not for the cold, unforgiving lens of the truth. "Let her go!" a man from the crowd shouted, his voice echoing with conviction. "She's an old lady!" another chimed in. "What are you doing?" The officers started to sweat, not from exertion, but from the pressure. Jenkins tried to regain control, raising his voice. "Everyone back off! You're obstructing a police investigation!" But his command lacked conviction. It was a desperate plea from someone losing his grip. Marcus didn't raise his voice, but he stepped a little closer, positioning himself even more clearly between Eleanor and the officers. "Abstracting what, officer?" he challenged, his voice quiet but piercing. "A baseless arrest, an assault on an innocent citizen? You've had ample opportunity to explain your actions, to provide a shred of evidence. Instead, you chose force against a woman who was simply enjoying her afternoon. Is this the best our community can expect?" The weight of Marcus's words, amplified by the relentless clicks of the cameras and the growing dissent from the crowd, pressed down on Thorne and Jenkins. This wasn't just about winning a petty argument. Their careers, their reputations, perhaps even their freedom, hung in the balance. In another time, another place, this incident might have been swept under the rug, a forgotten injustice. But not today, not with a legend standing firm, and not with 100 tiny screens broadcasting the raw, unedited truth. Just as Officer Thorne looked poised to make a desperate move, perhaps trying to forcibly remove Marcus, a new sound pierced the tension. The wail of an approaching siren. It wasn't the distant hum of city traffic. It was a focused, rapidly approaching Jingdi. The crowd parted instinctively as a marked patrol car screeched to a halt at the edge of the park. From it emerged a figure whose presence commanded immediate respect, a woman whose stern, unyielding gaze had quelled many a volatile situation. This was Sergeant Reyes, a seasoned veteran known for her unwavering commitment to the rule of law and her no-nonsense approach to misconduct within the force. The game had just changed, again. And for Thorne and Jenkins, the final act of this chilling drama was about to begin. The sudden silence from the siren, followed by the crisp, decisive footsteps, hung heavy in the air. Sergeant Reyes, a woman whose uniform seemed less a costume and more a second skin, surveyed the chaotic scene. Her eyes, sharp and assessing, moved from the bewildered crowd to the defiant Marcus Hayes, to the trembling Eleanor Vance still on the ground, and finally to the visibly shaken officers Thorne and Jenkins. There was no emotion in her gaze, only a cold, professional evaluation. "Officers Thorne, Jenkins, what exactly is going on here?" Sergeant Reyes' voice cut through the tension, not with anger but with an authority that left no room for evasion. Officer Thorne, his face pale, stammered, "Sergeant, we had a suspect match, jaywalking. This man, Mr. Hayes, he's obstructing a lawful arrest." He tried to sound confident, but his voice cracked at the end. Sergeant Reyes didn't even glance at Thorne. She turned to Marcus, her expression softening infinitesimally. "Mr. Hayes, can you explain what you witnessed?" Marcus, ever composed, pointed to the phones. "Sergeant, there are dozens of witnesses, and they all have it on video. An elderly woman minding her own business, thrown to the ground and handcuffed without explanation for a supposed jaywalking incident from this morning. It's a clear abuse of power." Sergeant Reyes' gaze returned to Thorne and Jenkins. It was a look that promised a reckoning. "Remove the handcuffs. Now." Her voice was low, but every word was a steel blade. Thorne hesitated for a moment, then, under Sergeant Reyes' unblinking stare, reluctantly knelt down. The metallic click of the handcuffs releasing Eleanor was a small sound, but in that moment it felt like thunder. Eleanor slowly, painfully rubbed her wrists, her eyes still wide with shock but now also with a fragile hope. "Mrs. Vance," Sergeant Reyes said, offering a steadying hand to help Eleanor to her feet. "Are you all right? I apologize for this. This is not how we operate." Her words, though professional, carried a genuine note of concern that was absent from Thorne and Jenkins. The crowd erupted in cheers. A weight seemed to lift from the entire park. But Sergeant Reyes wasn't finished. "Officers Thorne, Jenkins, you are both relieved of duty, effective immediately. You will return to the precinct. Your badges and firearms will be secured. A full internal investigation will begin tonight." Her words were like a gavel strike, final and unforgiving. The scene then blurred into a whirlwind of activity. News vans arrived, their satellite dishes unfolding like hungry flowers. The videos from the crowd, already circulating rapidly on social media, fueled a firestorm. "Elderly teacher brutalized in park. Boxing legend stands up to police abuse," the headlines screamed. The internal investigation, led personally by Sergeant Reyes, was swift and thorough. The compelling video evidence from the crowd was irrefutable. Eleanor, despite her ordeal, bravely provided her testimony, recounting every terrifying detail. Marcus, too, spoke eloquently about the importance of accountability and the trust that must exist between law enforcement and the community. The investigation unearthed a chilling truth. Officers Thorne and Jenkins, while new to the force, had a worrying pattern. There were whispers, ignored complaints about their aggressive demeanor and quickness to resort to force. They hadn't been explicitly taught to abuse power, but they'd operated within an unspoken culture, a silent understanding within certain ranks that control and dominance were paramount, often above courtesy or due process. They were rookies, desperate to prove their toughness, to show they wouldn't be soft or questioned. This tragic incident was a direct consequence of that unchecked mindset. The Internal Disciplinary Committee, facing overwhelming public pressure and irrefutable evidence, came to an unambiguous conclusion. Officers Thorne and Jenkins were formally dismissed from the force for gross misconduct, excessive force, and severe violations of professional ethics. Their actions, the committee stated, had destroyed public trust in the police force and betrayed the very oath they swore to uphold. Their records were forwarded to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. For Eleanor, the news brought a strange mix of relief and lingering sadness. She had faced darkness, but she had also witnessed the incredible power of a community united. For Marcus, it was a confirmation of his belief that even when the threads of justice seemed hopelessly tangled, they could still be unraveled, and accountability could, finally, find its way. The system wasn't perfect, far from it. But this moment was a glimmer of hope. It was a sign that silence was no longer an option and that the fight for fairness had just begun. The question now was, how would this ripple of change truly transform the mighty, often resistant ocean of an entire institution? The dismissal of Officer Thorne and Jenkins was not an ending but a resounding declaration. It was a ripple that transformed into a wave, washing over the entire Willow Creek community and eventually reaching far beyond. The initial shock of Eleanor Vance's ordeal, coupled with Marcus Hayes's unwavering stand, created a powerful demand for change that could no longer be ignored. Leading this transformation was Lieutenant Reyes. Her decisive actions in the park had earned her respect. And now, with the weight of public opinion and the media spotlight fixed upon them, she was empowered to enact real, systemic reforms. She understood that accountability wasn't just about punishing bad actors, it was about preventing their emergence in the first place. Lieutenant Reyes immediately implemented mandatory de-escalation training for all officers, emphasizing communication over confrontation. New cultural awareness programs were introduced, designed to foster empathy and understanding for all community members, especially the vulnerable. "Our role is not to dominate," she stated in a public address, "but to protect and to serve, with respect and compassion." She also launched an overhauled complaint system, allowing citizens to report misconduct anonymously, with every complaint guaranteed an independent review by an external committee. This wasn't just lip service, it was a fundamental shift. But true change, as Marcus Hayes often said, doesn't happen just within the walls of an institution. It begins in the hearts of its people. Marcus, now revered as a community hero, found a new purpose. He established the Marcus Hayes Community Trust, leveraging his name and resources to provide free legal aid for victims of police misconduct and to fund youth programs that fostered positive interactions between young people and law enforcement. He became a familiar face at town halls, not as a fighter but as a reconciler, his calm voice a beacon of hope. And Eleanor Vance, the quiet history teacher, once a victim, became a living testament to resilience. She didn't retreat. Instead, she found a new, powerful voice. She joined Marcus at community meetings, sharing her story not with bitterness, but with a quiet strength that moved countless listeners. That day, she would often say, her gaze clear and unwavering, "I thought I wouldn't see another tomorrow. But someone stood up. And thanks to that, I learned that even the smallest voice, when joined by others, can move mountains." Willow Creek Community Park, once the scene of terror, slowly transformed. It wasn't just a place for leisure anymore. It became a symbol of unity, of justice, of the fact that even in the face of profound injustice, the human spirit, when fueled by courage and compassion, could triumph. The story of Eleanor Vance and Marcus Hayes became more than a local incident. It resonated nationwide. Hashtags like "Justice for Eleanor" and "Stand with Marcus" trended, encouraging people from all walks of life to share their own stories of adversity and their struggles for justice. It was a powerful reminder that while systems can be broken, they are also built by people and can be rebuilt by them too. Marcus, reflecting on the whirlwind of events, often spoke about what truly satisfied him. It wasn't the roar of the crowd in a boxing arena, nor the accolades of fame. It was the quiet knowledge that he hadn't turned his back. It was seeing Eleanor, once broken, now standing tall, advocating for others. It was witnessing Lieutenant Reyes tirelessly reform a system she believed in. The changes in the police system, the renewed trust within the community, the faces of young officers embracing a new philosophy of service. These were the true trophies. They were the enduring legacy of that single afternoon in the park. Justice, we learn, is not a given. It doesn't just exist. It must be fought for, protected, and nurtured every single day through unity, through trust, and through perseverance. Every one of us has the power to contribute to a world where compassion, fairness, and respect are not just ideals, but lived realities. As you navigate your own journey, remember Eleanor's courage, Marcus's unlikely stand, and the power of a community that decided enough was enough. What act of courage, however small, will you choose today? Whose music will you help keep alive? The story isn't over. It's just beginning. With you. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If the journey resonated with you, and if you believe in the power of overcoming adversity, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to continue exploring more inspiring stories that challenge the status quo.